What's good, party people? This is the Woods and Wade podcast, and it's been a long time coming. I'm According to Woods, she's Claudia Wade, and we haven't done one of these in a while. And we're checking in and doing these things more regularly. But schedules have been hectic. What's been going on with you?
Life.
Life.
Life's been rough.
Well, life's been rough. I mean,
Yeah.
is that? Are you speaking from a dog's point of view? Life's been rough.
Negative.
No. Okay.
Yeah. I have a 2 year old that has had a fever since yesterday.
Oh wow.
Yep. I haven't slept well.
Ooh.
Didn't really work today.
Ooh.
So he's been a little off and on. But he goes to the doctor tomorrow, so hopefully he'll be fine.
Okay. I
Yeah.
get that's oh, let's just sending strength to that little dude because
Yeah.
it's not fun. Not
Yeah.
fun.
I think he must have caught something. We went to the fair on Saturday.
Oh, a fair like the county fairs are
Yeah.
notoriously where you get stuff
Yeah. But
because
he's
they've
the only
got
one that got sick. Like not even my baby, the baby. He's fine.
yeah, no, I mean if
So
there is a bunch of people, chances are one of the person is going to get it in your crew. If you go with a
yeah.
crew, theoretically speaking. So yeah, hate that he's the sacrificial lamb, but statistically
I
speaking,
know.
it was going to be one of you.
My little monster has
Yeah,
got sick. Yeah, but
I
he's all right.
mean
He's
that would make you Lady Gaga, right? And you had for your little monsters. No, that's what she called her fans is little monsters.
I don't know what anyone calls their fans.
Uh,
I don't
Jimmy
have
Buffett.
fans, so hmm.
There was a joke in there with OnlyFans, but yeah, no,
Mm-mm.
not gonna, not gonna,
Let's not go there.
not go there.
So
But
what's been
Jimmy,
going on? How are you? How are you? How's life?
currently not dead. That's cool.
That's always a
Um,
plus.
yeah, 100%. Unless you don't like living. Otherwise, like if you're like I don't know, like a mortician, then me being alive isn't the greatest thing for your business.
I wonder how morticians really feel about that.
Well,
Like,
did you know Paul Bear was an actual mortician?
because I dislike Paul Bear.
Okay,
I don't
well,
like anything about him. We spoke
oh,
about this. I can't
yes.
stand that man.
Well, it's not good to speak ill of a dead.
Oh
He
wow.
was, he's dead, and which is an ironic thing, I know. But yeah, Paul Bear was an
It
actual
happens.
mortician. Yeah, he was an actual
Death
mortician.
happens.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
is it? Is it Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Edison, one of those old fuckers? Like nothing is certain but death and taxes.
Hmm.
It's like the death part I understood, but you're one of the people that created the fucking country, right? So if you're like, no, these fuckers aren't paying tax, you had a direct role to not have that. So do we now pay taxes? What almost 300 years later in this country of the good old U.S. of A. Because this motherfucker wanted to get a quote right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, and yeah, apparently this ain't raising the roof. The motherfuckers are trying to raise the debt ceiling.
That just means more taxes for me.
I mean, yeah, fucking Thomas Jefferson Edison, whatever the fuck your face is,
Whoever it was.
whoever it was. Yeah. But speaking of like historic things, I mean, since we last spoke, you saw a historic thing, didn't you?
I did. We went to shit. I don't. We've seen a lot of historic things. We took a vacation
Okay.
to Tennessee and Kentucky,
Okay.
and we went to Lexington
Okay.
to see the Civil War area.
Oh Jesus.
So that was pretty cool because it's like a big ass mountain you kind of hike up
Okay.
with different historic things of that war, and then you make it to the top and you see the river and all this kind of shit. So that was pretty cool.
Oof,
Um,
man, you sure you didn't go to India?
yep, I'm sure it didn't go India. Yep.
Yeah, because I mean that's where the Ganges is, and from what I hear, it's a pretty shitty river.
Yeah, it looks dirty.
Okay, there you go.
But but I mean it was beautiful. It was a really nice area. So we went to Lexington. We also went to see the Ark, Noah's Ark, the replica of the Ark.
Okay, so I
So
mean, I was
I know
waiting for,
we've had,
I
and
was waiting for you to get here
that's
because
why I
like you
went
had to,
backwards.
yeah, you,
So
so we're getting like historic quotes and shit like that, and then you went to
um,
a non-historic
I went to
relic of a
a
place that, I mean, of a thing that may or may not have existed depending on where
theoretical,
you,
yes.
yeah,
So I went with the thought of this is a very religious thing,
okay,
but because I'm not a religious person,
right,
but I do work in an engineering field.
okay,
I looked at the entire thing, and not on purpose, but it just kind of happened as an engineering thing.
okay,
And just the whole process of how that boat was built, how they assume, right? The boat was built, how they assume everything was put into place. It's actually really fucking dope. Like,
what
it's
was
really
the,
dope.
I mean, of course, because considering that they didn't have a blueprint to speak of.
Right. So everything's theoretical. The whole thing is theoretical, right?
Wait, I thought
From
if you're of
beginning to
that
end.
faith sect, you don't believe in theory. You believe in,
Again, I am not a religious person,
right.
but theoretic dude, I swear, if you were to go and because you're not a religious person, you don't believe in it, like you would literally look at it as in an architectural point, right? Because so in theory, when we think of Noah's Ark, we hear in our minds or in our, in the way our books show us, kids' books, kids' Bibles, you see a bunch of animals just going into a big ass boat, right? So that's what everyone thinks, theoretically.
No,
Um,
not in some households in the U.S. of A. It's not theoretical; it's a historical fact.
right. But this is theoretical. Because the way once you walk in into this replica, like it's 3 floors of stuff, like like the bottom floor is where all the small animals were. There's a section where all the insects were, and they even ask you like, do they need to take insects? Because insects don't have lungs or I forget what. It's like this big old thing that they go through as far as like scientific facts. Like these certain animals, were they on the boat? Like again, everything was questioned. Like, were these animals on the boat? Because theoretically, they don't breathe a certain way, and in the Bible it says these animals are supposed to go. Right? Does that make sense?
I just love the irony that's happening, and that it's kind of very a tongue in cheek, like Christian take on science, which isn't Christian science the belief because that's a thing,
No, not at all.
right?
Right.
But it's like, hey, we can do the science too. Were they here? Were they
Right.
not?
Again,
Did we have a dung beetle? I don't know.
everything is completely theoretical in this boat.
Okay.
Again, because I'm not a religious person, I looked at it as an architectural like genius thing,
Okay.
right? The way the smaller animals were put into like these cages type thing, the way they were fed, like just the mechanism of how all these animals are fed and how they're quarters were clean, how they got water to feed, or to give to the animals, how they made food for the animals during that time, like how they got light or fire, like all those little details that you would never think of. That they had dinosaurs on the boat because it was that long ago. Yes. So theoretically, there could have been dinosaurs in this boat. Don't laugh. Like, it's really, like, if you really look at it just as a scientific, historic type thing, if you look at it as a religion, because I overheard a lot of people that were there religiously, the conversations that you
Oh,
hear are
give me
like,
some of that. I want some of that.
I
Like
don't. I
when?
can't even remember. I can't even like
Oh,
tell
come
you.
on!
Like,
You should have just
seriously,
held your phone up and just.
I'm not even kidding you. I should have.
Yes, I would have loved to
Because,
hear that.
so, going through this whole thing, right? You go through these 3 floors of stuff. Like, they even have, and then we were going through, the beginning, like when Adam and Eve, and
Are
there's
they
a
on the boat?
painting. No, there's only 8 people on the boat, and it took 900 plus years to build this boat. So Adam, or what's the name?
Jim, Bob,
Who was on the boat? Shit, now you gave me a brain fart.
Bob shit.
Well, he lived to be like 973 years. Anyway, it was a long time.
But
So,
also, did I mean the way that they tabulated years, right? Like when the sun came up and it went bye bye, that
so
could have been a year. So he
when
lived
you come
900 days.
when you come over,
That's
I
a
will.
weird place to stop.
When you come over, I will. There's this boat of there's a wall there that's the history of the world
Okay.
from day one, and it's very interesting. So I bought it because I really wanted to like go through everything and see how, like, just the thought process of everything happens. I want you to look at it when you come over.
Okay.
I'm having you come over. We're gonna podcast you looking
Okay.
at this shit because,
Okay.
again, everything's
It's
theoretical,
tremendous.
and like, just it's interesting to like see how these theories come about,
I mean,
right? And so let me tell you, we were there maybe 4.5 hours, maybe 5,
Jesus, that's
because
like
there's a lot to look at. There's a lot to go through,
4 hours
but
and
there's
29 minutes more than would have been able to
but
last.
no. You would definitely, again, you wouldn't be there for the religious part. You wouldn't be there. You
You
would
would
be
have
there
kicked me out. I would have
just for theory.
spontaneously combusted.
No, you would. I guarantee you wouldn't. Anyway, so we're going through this area where it tells you like the whole history from beginning to the flood and why it
In the
happened.
beginning.
And we're reading and we're looking at this picture, and Eve is holding
Oh,
grapes.
oh, I thought it was like a raptor.
No, Eve's holding grapes. And my nephew comes up to me and says, I thought Eve ate an apple,
Okay.
right? Because that's what we're taught, right?
Okay.
So we're taught that Eve eats the forbidden fruit, it's an apple. And I tell him, I said, no. I said, read the scripture. And the scripture's it's written at the bottom. It says that Eve eats from the forbidden fruit. Us as humans or whomever has taught it said apple. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that it's apple. Not one place in the Bible does it say that Eve ate an apple. It says forbidden fruit.
So are you telling me this is the origin story of the phrase alternative facts?
Sure.
Oh Jesus. Oh, we can thank
There
Kellyanne
was
Conway, the former press secretary of the good old 45th president, for that one.
there
That's
there was
not
a
a lie.
there's
It's just alternative facts.
it is. If so, now that you say that, right?
Okay.
Think of what exactly you just said. Through the whole thing, again, I am not a religious person, so
All
I'm
right.
not going through this boat looking
Okay.
at all there's a lot of religious stuff on it. There's a lot of religious scriptures. There is why the flood happened, how it happened. The at the bottom is like the sayings of whatever part of the Bible that's been taken care of. And then throughout the whole thing, we find out that what's his name's wife is never mentioned in the Bible.
Because either he's a polygamist or he's
No, he has one wife,
okay. He has one wife.
but they never mention her name. They always say whatever his name. What the hell is his name? Who made the goddamn boat? Now you have gave me a brain
Caesar,
fart. No,
George Washington.
you're just playing dumb.
I
Anyway,
don't play them. I play
well that's true.
Noah's Ark.
Yeah, no. Thank you. See, you're giving me a brain fart. So nowhere in the Bible do they mention Noah's wife's name. They say Noah's wife, Noah's wife, Noah's wife. They say Noah's son, Julio,
Okay.
Noah's whatever
What
in
is their
law.
last name?
I don't remember. I know it's on there, I think, but I don't remember. But anyway, so at the end of all this, they show you how each country says that they have, or each region have a copy of or a version of the Bible
Okay.
and how they interpret it.
Okay.
Right. So they show this is what Asia's Bible looks like. This is what Australia's Bible looks like. This is what the US, this is what the UK, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm telling my sister-in-law, we're going through all this. And I tell my sister-in-law, I said, I was like, if you really think about it, the Bible is just gossip that someone wrote down. Right.
There we go.
Again, because I'm not a religious person. So as I'm listening to other people speak about certain sections of this boat, they look at like one of the areas, there's a big door, and I think I posted it. And it's like God's doors, and only He can open, because that's where all the animals and everything was there. And then when it was time for them to get out, only He can open the doors. So everyone's taking pictures in front of it. We took pictures in front of it. It was beautiful. And they're sitting there talking, and they're talking about the doors and how God X, Y, Z. And I'm like, this is crazy, because I would have never thought of it, because I'm not a religious person. That whatever they were talking about is not my first thought of it. But that's how you interpret the Bible. You interpret the Bible. If you read the Bible, you interpret it as to where in life, what place in life you're in. That was my first theory, right?
Okay.
If I'm in a good place in my life and I read this Bible, it's going to give me a good representation of what I want to, what I hope to know and learn about the Bible.
Okay.
If I'm not in a good place, and this is just my theory, if I'm not in a good place, if I'm in a confusing place, it's going to be a confusing read, because I'm not in a state of mind to read this specific book. Right. And so then I was telling my sister-in-law, I said, unless God Himself wrote the whole Bible, everything is hearsay. Because if I tell Adam, oh my God, I saw Julie kissing Frank, and that's not her boyfriend, and then you go tell someone else, you're going to say it a different way. You are never going to say that gossip verbatim. So
Right.
the Bible is not verbatim.
Yeah, that's been my kind of take on it, right?
Right.
Where
And I've always thought of that. I've always
you remember telephone when we were kids, right? On the rainy days, everybody put their head down, teacher whispers into kid one, right? And then they got to pass it along or whatever. And then 30 kids later, it's like,
a whole different thing.
yeah, it's usually
Yeah.
sordid. Why were we thinking those things when we were, I don't know, 7? I
Right.
don't know.
Yeah. So, and I had this conversation only with my sister-in-law, because the kids have a different perspective. And who am I to change your perspective of how you see?
Interpret. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So, but we were talking about it, and she's not a religious person. She wasn't raised religiously at all. We were raised Catholic, so I kind of understand what the whole meaning of the ark was and all this shit and blah blah blah. So I kind of had an idea. The boys do Bible study and all that stuff. So they're currently reading. So to them, it's a whole different
Mm.
mindset. And so this is why all these questions were coming about. Well, I thought this was an apple. Well, I thought da 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 da. Da. And so with my nephews, because they're very like, and you've had conversations with my nephews.
Yeah, they're very intellectually.
They're very intellectual,
Yeah, I mean,
intellectually deep.
more than competent. They hold their own.
Yeah. And so having these conversations with them on the boat and trying to understand different things, it's like crazy because that's when you start learning. Look, because they're in this place in their life, this is how they see it. Because I'm in this place in my life, this is how I see this part. And so everything, so that's why I said it's a good place to go to. So you can like really see like the theory of the architectural part of how the boat was made, how everything comes together, how everything gets done. Like it's just insane. Like insane to think one person did this, right? And
Well,
insane
maybe
to like really get it and then be like, fuck, like there's so the
maybe
art was a great experience, I'm gonna tell you.
I'm glad. You said it was in Lexington, Kentucky.
No, the Civil War
Okay.
thing was in
Well,
Lexington.
you know what's crazy about Civil War things being in Lexington? Did you go to Rep Arena or hear of it?
I don't remember.
Okay. So Rep Arena, I believe, is in the University of Kentucky
Uh-huh.
campus, right?
Uh-huh.
I know it because obviously during like the Attitude Era, like when WWF used to go to Rep Arena, there's literally a banner, like not like how we know, like if you watch a concert or whatever, a sporting event, whatever, they've got the nice LED screens and everything
Hmm.
like that. No, this one is like a painted on, so like a white banner with like red letters, and it said like Rep Arena, Lexington, Kentucky, and they just had it, and it was always in the TV shot if they pan to the crowd. Now, Rep Arena
Hmm.
uh, was named after like the winningest basketball coach in that university's history. Uh,
Hmm.
his last name was Rupp. Do you know what his first name was?
No.
Adolf. Adolf Rupp and the Civil War stuff. I love it. Lexington. Probably not going to go there. Sorry, Lexington.
It's not Lexington was beautiful.
I'm not saying that it's not beautiful aesthetically.
Uh-huh.
Just might, I don't know, stuff. Just stuff.
Wonder
Might
was it?
might not be seen. Might not be
Uh,
safe.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it was a good experience. And actually, we weren't even gonna go there. It was one of those things that my nephew was like, "Wait, this is Lexington, Kentucky," and I said, "Yes." And he said, "We're just starting to learn the Civil War. We're just starting to learn about the Civil War." And he was like, "Do you think we can maybe find?" I said, "I don't know. We got to look it up." So we looked it up, and I think it's one area of where the
The Civil
Civil
War.
War happened, like
Okay.
a part of like one side.
Well,
So,
the wild part is if it's in Kentucky, right? It's below the Mason Dixon, right?
uh-huh.
So that was its own country,
Right.
right? It's Jefferson Davis is the states of the Confederacy, and Kentucky, for the most part, was under the Mason Dixon line. So it's not even a piece of American culture. It's a part of a country that no longer existed. So that's wild.
Yeah.
Which I
But
always philosophically, I kind of like. So there's a nomenclature of people that are like want the South to rise again. We
mhm.
need to have our history and our
Oh, we
monuments.
saw.
Oh yeah, I figured
I've
as much.
seen some. Well, I noticed because, like I said, I'm older, so I pay attention to certain things. But I was like, damn, I was like, this shit is wild. I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh,
So here's the thing, right? So you want the South to rise again, meaning well, it can be construed. This is the way I perceive it and I interpret it. You want the South, which was once a country, but is a country no longer because it was basically taken over by the United States of America,
mm-hmm.
right? And enveloped into the country,
Yeah.
right? So, with that, and the major kind of tentpole, slavery in the South, no slavery in the
Mm-hmm.
North, right? To the extent that Abraham Lincoln it was a kind of it was a sly ploy, but
Right.
he freed all the slaves, including the ones in the South, which he didn't have
Mm-hmm.
a jurisdiction. That's just like if the Beverly Hills PD came to you where you are, where I am,
Mm-hmm.
and said, "Hey, we're arresting you." Actually,
Right.
no, you can't because you're not in our
Out of
jurisdiction.
registration. Yep.
Right.
Which
So,
is crazy because in Tennessee that we went to go see these caves in Tennessee,
mhm,
and some of the slave. Okay, so I can't fully remember how this went, but some of the slaves that were freed,
mhm,
I guess, feared that they would be slaves again, so they left. Right.
yeah,
So they leave, and then there's an area in Tennessee that has these big old caves,
right,
and there's like body of water and all this other stuff, and they took over that area, and it was only blacks in those caves. And then I guess they probably went underneath, and that's where they slept, that's where they hid. And then they made vegetation and food and everything at the top, and then there was like an open area in between all these caves where they had parties, where they got married. Like it was a bunch of like stuff, and all the whites called that area like Little Africa or the
damn,
Africans. Like it was, yeah,
Jesus Christ.
it's
I mean, it's
wild.
a sense of pride, but also like, uh, these are the same folk that a few generations removed. You're like, yeah, we
But you
landed
see,
in
like,
India, so you all must be Indians.
yeah, it was really wild. Like a lot
So,
of that.
so again, like the whole thing about wanting the South to rise again, right? And you want your Confederate flag, and you want your Civil War heroes and reenacted and all the jazz, right? But also you're American.
Right.
How does that? How could you make that concession? Because you want the ideals of a country that is no longer,
Hmm.
but you also want the fringe benefits of basically being on the winning side, the United States of America. You can't be like, I want my Confederate, whatever grandpappy, right, to be
Right.
buried with military honors.
Right.
Okay, well, cool. We'll do the military honors in the damn country that they fought under. Oh wait,
Hmm.
that doesn't exist anymore, bro. And I
Right.
mean, it's not like because especially living in California, Southern California, right? I mean, this is native land, right? I mean, much of all of America, but specifically, Southern California, into Northern California, right?
Right.
And it's just wild because you can argue, right, that I mean, like the native people, whether you call them Cherokee, Aztec, Inca, Navajo,
Whatever.
native people, right?
Hmm.
If you're up in Canada, they're the First Nations, right? So you could, like, want to bring up that culture because that culture existed for thousands of years. There's
Hmm.
like,
Still trying. Yeah.
relics of the past that are still standing, right? Ancient, right? But then
Hmm.
when you look at like the Confederate, like the states of the Confederacy,
Hmm.
10 years,
She's wild.
You know,
But
but
like, yeah,
like,
to see all that, like I think to read, like like I was telling, like I'm trying to find what they used to call this place. It's so the place is called Dunbar Caves,
okay,
but I guess they called it an African American space, or but they called it Little Africa. I have to find the passage,
wow, right on.
but yeah. So, but it's really cool. Like if you look up those caves, are really. And we got there when they were closed, so we were able to see the outside area. We weren't able to go into the caves
Okay.
if we wanted to.
Funny
But
enough, I mean, I had the same experience, but it wasn't, caves or natural wonderment. It was actually Graceland in Memphis,
uh
and
huh.
I mean, one would argue that's I don't know,
Hmm.
not Little Africa is what I'm saying.
No.
What's funny enough? Oh, oh
Oh,
man,
that's what it's called. It's called Africana Town. That's what they used to call it. That's what the whites called it.
Africana. And that's weird too, right? Because like, if you know anything about the like the whole South African deal and apartheid and stuff like that, right?
Hmm.
Well, the white Africans are called Afrikaners, so it's
Hmm.
weird that like they were connected to this even like thousands of, and I don't know when which happened. I don't have the Google machine in front of me, but
Right.
like when the Europeans took over Africa, and specifically in this particular context South Africa, right? Until when, like,
Hmm.
what, the 90s, is when they freed Mandela from prison, and South Africa became its own country, right? To when they're basically naming this African town, but it's something similar, right? Which kind of reminds me of that show. It's uh Lewis Gates. He's the dude that I think he was like a Harvard professor, one of the Ivy League professors, right? And
Hmm.
he literally locked himself out. Like, we've anybody that's had any type of home, we've done that, right? And locked himself out of the apartment, locked
Hmm.
himself out of the house. He locked himself out, and then the damn SWAT came and were like, "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" And guns drawn and everything like that. He was actually trying to get into his house, but you were like, "Oh, you're breaking in and whatever." And it culminated
It's my
into,
house.
yeah, it culminated into like this mea culpa, and the first ever, since we're talking about American history, the beer summit. Do you know what that was?
No.
The then President Obama came to that professor's house. I believe Professor Gates. That I do know. I want to say it's Henry Louis Gates, but I'm not sure of it. Whatever, but it's definitely last name Gates, right? But
Hmm.
that then President Obama basically came to Professor Gates's place, and they drank beer on the lawn, right? And that
Hmm.
was the beer summit, and that was like a mea culpa. Well,
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know
So
that.
so Professor Gates, he is the host of that show where they retrace your history. It's like the 23andMe, but like the celebrity version, where like you do
Hmm.
a half hour special or an hour special,
Hmm.
right? Well, they did one on Spike Lee, right? And Spike Lee's character, obviously, he directed his own movies and what have you, but
Hmm.
in Do the Right Thing, one of his most iconic movies, well, there's a character named Mars, right? And that character is played by none other than Spike Lee himself,
Hmm.
right? So, long story short, it was said that there was a slave in Spike Lee's genealogy that's name was Mars. So
Hmm.
somehow, some way, like he was kind of awakening to his ancestors and had this name Mars, and it was a titular character for
Hmm.
himself in his own movie.
That's
So like
crazy.
literally from like slave to being in a feature film and you name yourself one of your descendants
Oh,
without
it's
even
like,
knowing it,
yeah,
right?
that's wild.
So same they call African town there in Kentucky, right? But Afrikaners over in the other side of the world, and how many centuries apart is
On the
what?
opposite.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that's just wild.
just saying, man. So it's weird. People are
Yeah.
weird. People.
I mean, I like going to all these little places, like all these old historic places. I don't know why. I mean, I like history. I'm not a person that's gonna sit here and read books and books of history, but if
Yeah.
I'm somewhere that's historic, like I really like it. Like when I moved to Vegas, I went to a couple of places outdoors where they did the first where they had all the water.
Hoover Dam.
Only no. Just it was like an area where they
Buried the
processed
bodies.
the water. Yeah, well, yeah, that too. But
Okay.
you know what? Actually, when I was in Vegas, I've never went to any of like the mobster places. I'm just not a. I don't know. It doesn't
Well, I mean,
like they have that mob museum and stuff. Like,
yeah. I mean, not that, but also, what is Vegas? It was a place where all the Midwestern, specifically
uh-huh.
Chicago-based mobsters, to it was basically a haven, for
Yeah.
them to.
Hmm.
So, with that all being said, like you can't get Las Vegas specifically without having some mob ties or at least tipping your hat to that.
Yeah.
Whereas other places, I mean, but there's been thievery in a lot of stuff, right? Like I'm a
Hmm.
fan of the San Francisco 49ers, right? And 49ers were the people who were, the gold prospectors that came from every country when
Hmm.
they heard that there was a gold rush, and they literally packed up whatever, people died, like trying to just,
Get the gold,
yeah, trying to get the gold.
dude. I think
Um,
this is wild.
it is.
My dad watches that gold mine shit. I'm like, dude, like, it, it's
Oh,
just wild.
I just saw something today that, like, because of all the rain and stuff that
I
we've
was
been
just about to
having,
tell you that because of the rain, a lot of people are starting to get back into gold mining
yeah,
and all this stuff. And
I mean, it's wild, right? But see, even like the 49ers, right? Like, so those are people that came and did big things during the gold rush, right?
mhm.
But it screwed out everybody. Like you could almost literally trace the aristocrats of the next like 3, 4, 7 decades of California history for the people who got here first, and then like, oh, we got gold, we got riches, and shut everyone else out,
Mhm.
right? Same thing with like the Oklahoma OU, right?
Mhm.
Their mascot is the Sooner. What is a Sooner? Well,
What is it?
okay, so long story short, they had a hard time getting people to move to Oklahoma because for the time the land wasn't particularly fertile, to grow stuff. There wasn't um, stuff to eat. Like it was just they needed something to inject people to live there and whatever, right? So the
Mhm.
property would be worth anything, right? So they had this contest, and they were like, "Hey, come here. You camp the night before, but whatever, like 7 o'clock, right? Everybody is going to go into the land, and wherever you stake your claim, that land is yours."
Mhm.
Okay. So some kind of forward-thinking people, some would say, not the greatest people because they didn't adhere to the rules, right? Or they found their own loophole.
Loophole.
Well, where everybody was asleep, right? They went there. So when the thing was supposed to begin, they had already claimed the fertile land, or the ones, by the rivers and the estuaries and stuff like that and whatever.
Mhm.
So the whole thing about Oklahoma and Sooner is those people got there sooner than the rest of them. So Boomer Sooner.
Got it. That's pretty interesting.
I mean, it's something. Oh my gosh. I think
You ready?
Yeah.
Ready?
Yeah, that might.
All right.
I saw double vision. Yeah, I'm according to Woods. Hopefully I don't die.
You'll be fine.
Yeah.
I'm CC. Find us on the Twitter machine on everything at According to Woods and at TC Wade at everything you look for. We'll see you guys soon.
See you soon, hopefully.
Bye.